All right, we'd like to welcome you into the Eurosnob Podcast. My name is Ian Smith. We're here with Alex and with Bill tonight. How you guys doing?
Good. Doing well. How about yourself, Bill?
I'm good. I hope everybody is doing well. Everybody looks good.
Hey, I mean, we try, right?
We cleaned up a little bit for this, although none of you can see that, so it really doesn't help, does it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, Bill, it's good to have you in. I know you and Alex did a good job on our first episode this season, and it was depressing for me to not be there with you guys, so it's good to have you back for another go.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It was fun to do that. We missed you. And a lot of my predictions pretty much blew up in my face for a little bit there. So it really didn't matter.
I was right there with you. I remember I was very positive some predictions, and then 3 weeks into the season, I looked like an idiot. So hope to do more of that.
Same.
It seems like that's a reoccurring trend with us.
Oh, yeah.
We tend to get a little bit overly positive, and then it all comes crashing down.
It's the hope that kills you, they say, right?
Yeah, something like that. That's I think that's why we're all Arsenal fans, right?
This is true.
So, well, on a positive note, since we're kind of on that subject, 2-0 against Brighton. Bill, what are your initial thoughts on that game?
Pretty standard game. Looks like the team's trying to get in their stride. I mean, all of the pieces don't seem like they're in the puzzle, so it's really hard to judge. Would love to see the front three that everybody would like to see. I think with Lacazette, Alexis, Ozil, maybe to some degree in a sustainable amount of games. But overall with the game, pretty simple. I know I was on Iwobi a lot on Twitter. He got a goal. I think that I pretty much helped him do that because of all the negativity I was taking away from him. And other than that, I mean, I love the back heel pass by Alexis. That was a memorable moment. Xhaka, I know I love Xhaka. It looks rough for him. I don't want to blame it solely on him, but it just seems like the team's trying to get a little bit of cohesion going. But other than that, pretty standard game, like Nacho scoring. I didn't realize it's been since Swansea when he scored. So that was a nice little stat, and to see him score there. And other than that, glad they got the 3 points before the interlull, as they call it, and thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think, bud?
Yeah, no, I think Bill hit the nail on the head. There's still a little bit of a lack of cohesion at this point. I mean, you could tell there were some bright moments, but they were kind of in spurts, and we're not really consistent throughout the game. And this is one of those games where you kind of get frustrated as an Arsenal fan because you have the better players, but the ball is just moving too slowly because I think the team also knows that they should win, and they kind of are a little more passive in their passing and trying little flicks and things like that, and just not really putting it away early. And then, 2-0 is probably about fair given the way the game played out, but I didn't think we looked spectacular. Midfield looked okay. Bill brought up a good point about Xhaka not necessarily having the best start to the season. Iwobi grew into the game later on. I will say he struggled early on for sure. And then, Lacazette, Alexis, they show some promising signs of link up, but, obviously you'd like to see a little more of that and then get Ozil in there and really see what they can do. But overall, it was a pretty comfortable win. At no point did we really look threatened defensively. Brighton really didn't have much in the attack, but it's a win and it's 3 points, and we do have a little bit of a run going. So can't look a gift horse in the mouth, and take the 3 points. And it's good to go into the international break with some positive momentum.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the word that describes it the best is comfortable. We never looked overly troubled. We never looked like we were put under too much pressure. And honestly, there was really no doubt that we were going to win that game. So I think it's a good thing to see. In the past, we've really struggled against teams of that ilk that like to sit deep and make us break them down. In the past seasons, we've seen that's a tough thing for us to go and a tough game for us to go and win from time to time. So I think it was good to see us, get a couple goals and really never look troubled in that. For me, the biggest omission in that game was Ozil. And I know, there's a lot of debate. In my opinion, it's misguided, or a lot of opinion about this. And in my opinion, it's misguided that we're a better side without Mesut Ozil in there. I don't know about you guys, Alex. I think you got some pretty strong feelings about that take.
I just think it's so short-sighted because it's not taking into account the opposition we're playing. It's not taking into account the circumstances. And, I saw a bunch of journalists say, it's no wonder that Arsenal's gone on a winning run since they lost Ozil. I mean, look who we played. We played West Brom. We played Brighton. We did get the draw away at Chelsea. But I don't think you can chalk that up to Ozil not being there. I mean, we were pretty successful against Chelsea in games that Ozil did play. And I think you see it in our passing in the final third. We don't really have anyone who can make that incisive final pass. Alexis tries to, but then if he starts dropping deep, to make those passes, all of a sudden you have Lacazette kind of on his own and he can get a little bit isolated up there. If you have that guy who can play that killer final pass, then Alexis can play higher up and you have more goal threat. It's become it's not become the fashionable thing. It's been the fashionable thing for several seasons now to just bash on Ozil and criticize his work rate and this and that. And then now people are pointing to a few games and say, oh, see, Arsenal's winning these games and it must be because they don't have Ozil. I'm like, no, these were games we would win regardless. It's not because Ozil's not playing. It's just we have a gulf in class against teams like West Brom and Brighton. So it's one of those things where people are correlating two things that I don't feel should be correlated. I mean, am I off on this, Bill? What's kind of your take on the Ozil absence, and is it being overstated or understated?
I mean, the way my brain works, because of my mathematics background, I try to go from point A to point B, you know what I mean? And there are so many variables that you mentioned that you just cannot factor. Opposition, you know what I mean? There's this argument of, oh, we look better, we look worse. I think we would have beat those teams. In fact, I think we would have scored more. I mean, I think Man City only scored 2 against Brighton. I don't think Brighton have let in more than 2 goals this year in a game. So to score 2 goals against them, even though they're newly promoted, I mean, they have something to prove, I guess, being, freshly in the Premier League. So I think the argument is very, very lacking in depth. And I think it's ridiculous because I think with Ozil, I think we score a goal at Chelsea. I think with Ozil, we maybe get 4 goals against Brighton. So I don't know. I'm not a big basher of Ozil. I'm not a big lover of Ozil, but I recognize what he is, and he's an addition to the squad. So I think any game without him would hurt the team to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's no doubt about that. I think we probably put a couple more in if Ozil's on the team, or if he's in the team for that game against Brighton. The thing he does well is he pops up in dangerous locations and plays that killer final ball. And it's not necessarily just the final ball. He also plays the pass before the final ball that puts somebody else in the position to set up the final ball. So that doesn't necessarily reflect in assist statistics, but that key pass that sets up the assist, that's something that without him in the team, we really don't get. Alexis is fantastic at setting up that final ball. Lacazette's a great finisher. Iwobi's a good dribbler in space, and Xhaka can play that early ball in. Without Ozil in there, there's really nobody that can necessarily facilitate getting people into those positions to play that final ball. You know what I mean? So I think we struggle a little bit in our creativity without him in there, and we look a little bit predictable at times. And that's when teams that sit deep, that's when it becomes more and more difficult to break them down.
Yeah, and I think and we mentioned Xhaka kind of struggling this season. I think the fact that Ozil hasn't been playing is partially a reason for that, because all of a sudden you don't have that creativity in the final third. And I think Xhaka is almost taking it on himself to try to fill that void. And so I think he's forcing things at times. He's forcing passes and he's trying to do too much. And I think that's kind of weighing him down. I think with Ozil back in the team, he can kind of focus on what he does best, which is dictate the play from deep, find guys higher up the pitch, and then just sort of sit back and not put himself in a position where he's trying to carry the entire midfield load by himself. Mm-hmm. And it is like what you guys said. I mean, I think you put it's not necessarily that Ozil is going to score you goals, but he is going to create enough chances where eventually you're going to put a few of them in, especially against a team like Brighton that defensively solid, so a guy like Iwobi is not necessarily going to have the key to unlock that. So I think Ozil would come into play there. I mean, the Chelsea thing, people were saying, Arsenal went away in this big away performance, and it's because Ozil wasn't playing and everyone was working hard. If you just look at the numbers, Ozil works as hard as anyone on the team. So this idea that somehow he's not carrying his weight in these games is just silly to me. But I will say, like on Twitter, and you guys can probably vouch for this too, Ozil fans can be too defensive also. Like, they don't see any wrong in him. And I think there are games where he absolutely does struggle to make an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely no doubt about that point. And I'm sure I'm guilty of that because I may not be the most vocal Ozil supporter, but I'm pretty much always in this corner. I think you're right. I mean, there are games when he struggles to find those spaces, and I would be, I kind of wish I had more time and I could take a deeper look into the tactics that those teams employed against us in those games when he struggled, because I would bet that they focused the majority of their attention on taking him out of that game. I mean, when we're in position, they shift everybody to make sure that he can't get on the ball, or when he is on the ball, there's three guys in his face. I mean, you can take one player out of a game. In situations like that, that's when you need other players to step up. When he, just by virtue of being on the pitch, draws so much attention that it frees up one-on-one matchups for other players on the field, they need to take advantage of that as well. And again, I know I'm sounding like, I'm in Ozil's corner again, but it's more of a matter of fact. And I'm not saying I know that that's the case. I'd just be curious to see if that really is how it is. But I think I don't think there's any question, back to the original topic, that there's no question that we're a better side with him in that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's tough because I just think we're in a stretch of the schedule where we were going to win games regardless. And I think, Ian, you and I talked about this last week. Like, this is the part of the schedule where you need to put wins together before you get to the stretch. I think it's early November, we said, where you got Tottenham at home, City away, and then you have Manchester United a few weeks after. Mm-hmm. Just kind of looking at where we're at in the season and where we are as a team. Bill, kind of want to get your take on this. Is, how do you feel? Like, obviously, both of us were very optimistic coming into the season. I think we have the podcast proof of that.
Right.
But like, what do you think of where the team is at? I mean, are you disappointed, obviously with the way things started, or, what's kind of your feeling?
I mean, I'm obviously disappointed to a degree with the way that it started. But, not having Welbeck for a couple of games and Ozil, as we mentioned, is going to, hurt the team to a degree. But we do have that nice little run coming up. I mean, at the beginning, I was a little bit upset, but I mean, our record is pretty decent for where we're at. Level on points with Chelsea. I know that that's not something to be celebrated, but where we started to where we are now is a massive improvement. I mean, our prediction for the final standings may not be off still. I mean, it's possible. I know the two Manchester clubs are up top, but I know we'll probably get into one on why we think they are where they are. But I don't mind the start. I mean, I'd like to see them get going, but I'd like to see all the pieces playing together first to see like how that works and see when we truly hit November, will the team be prepared for that little run that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously the narrative, there's a crisis at Arsenal. It's funny because there always is a crisis at Arsenal, according to the media. But when you look at the table, we are level on points with Chelsea. We're 1 point back of Tottenham.
Yeah.
Out of third place. We're in fifth place in the table right now.
We're also ahead of Liverpool, who beat us, but
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, right. So the fact that we're in that position, considering the start that we had, I mean, I think that's got to bode well for the rest of the season. I mean, yeah, we're 6 points behind City and United. We also do play both teams twice. So realistically, yeah, can we still mount a title challenge? Absolutely. There's so many games to play. they obviously have the head start, but we're right there. I mean, they're certainly not a crisis. I think as far as I think City is probably a step ahead of everybody else. I really think that they're the class of this league, and it's really not close in my opinion. We talked about Liverpool a little bit last week and how I'm not sure that they have the squad depth to go another season this way. I mean, their new $40 million man sure as hell hasn't made the impact they've wanted to see him make. You guys know my feelings on Tottenham. Their team is not very deep. No, it's going to come down to realistically who stays healthy out of that group of teams. And in the past, that usually means that it's not us because we don't stay healthy. But as far as the start, I mean, I don't think you can be too upset with where we're at. Can you? Can we, Alex?
I think you can, to the extent that the Liverpool loss, at least the manner of it, was avoidable. Like we've talked about, where we're playing a right wing back and left wing back. We're playing a right-sided midfielder as a right wing back, and we don't play our best left wing back. And just all the general chaos going into that game. And the Stoke game, I mean, that's one of those where, you were denied 2 clear penalties and you had a bunch of chances and then, Stoke got one chance and put it away. And, we're usually good for 1 or 2 of those a year where we just lose one game away that we shouldn't to a team that we shouldn't. But I mean, you got to at least be somewhat happy about the way the team has rebounded and to get the point at Chelsea, where, to be fair, we've struggled a lot in recent seasons. I think that showed some progress. I mean, but again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it really does come down to that 2-game stretch where you have Tottenham home, City away. If you come out of that with 4 points, I think that's a best case scenario. And if you come out of that with 4 points, I think you have to actually feel pretty good about the way your season is headed. What would you say, Bill?
I mean, I feel that, with how things can come together, upcoming, especially after the international break, I'm hoping that the momentum carries through. I honestly still think Tottenham is going to really struggle at their new stadium still. I think they're going to get a lot of draws there. I think that they're going to drop. I think there's a realistic chance I think I predicted them to finish second. I think you did too. I'm not really positive about that, but I really still think that they could get up there. I think it's about, I'd like to see Wilshere play a little more. I mean, maybe not a full 90, but he could certainly play the first 60, but I know that's against Wenger's 72-minute sub policy. But I believe that, if he could get some time and get some rotation in there, especially when they get out of the Europa group stage, hopefully, I think it'll be really good for the Premier League at that point for them, because when that February time hits, they really need that extra rotation to kind of get through that always scary period around that time of the year.
I think it's a great point. Wilshere's one of those players that coming into the season, I think everybody said you can't count on him to be that. You can't count on him to be an impact player for you. And I know I said the same thing. I mean, he's somebody that I wanted to count on. I wanted to be able to say, yeah, he's going to be able to be there and make an impact. But just based on his injury history and whether or not he would even make it back to being the quality that we need from him, you couldn't really count on him. But I also think that was with the understanding that we were going to sign another central midfielder in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And when we didn't do that, just that fact alone to me says, yeah, we are counting on him to be an impact player. And that's kind of a scary thing. But for me, he also has shown the signs of and the flashes of starting to get back to the kind of player that can play in our first team. And really, he's going to – I'm glad you brought him up, Bill, because he's going to make the difference, honestly, for me, about where our season is going to go. And that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
But, right now we have Xhaka and Ramsey as those 2 central midfielders. And, yes, El Neni can play there. When Coquelin's healthy, he can play there. But I don't see them as being first team quality for us.
Mm-mm.
So right now, in my opinion, we have 2 first team quality central midfielders. And for us to succeed and finish in the top 3, which I think we're capable of, but to finish there, Wilshere is going to need to have a big impact. And also, I think Maitland-Niles is going to need to break through for this team because we need some more dynamism in that midfield. And we're going to need the depth because there's going to be injuries. We know that.
Yeah, I mean, you figure Ramsey's good for one muscular injury fairly soon. Xhaka, I mean, he's stayed healthy since he got here, but you just assume at some point little nicks and things like that will catch up to him. And it's interesting we're talking about Wilshere. I mean, I'm still hesitant to say he's going to play a huge part in our season, but I will say, like, the way he played against Bate Borisov and kind of how he was involved in everything good we did in that game. Honestly, he was at the heart of it. He was picking out passes. And the thing I liked is, he knows he doesn't have the explosiveness that he used to in terms of kind of dribbling through midfield, but his passing range has always been fantastic. So he's picking out passes and then kind of timing his runs and picking his spots to get forward, which it showed a little bit of maturity in his game. I do think he's a player you kind of want higher up the pitch where he can influence things. I mean, you saw it on the goal that Walcott scored where he kind of got forward and created some havoc there. So he's a guy you want higher up the pitch. But I do think, if he can stay healthy, and that's the biggest if in Arsenal story right now, if he can stay healthy, all of a sudden you do have the chance to kind of tinker with your lineup a little bit and try some different combinations and see what works. And it's another piece to have. And that's where the Europa League games are really important, where you get these guys games to get them fit. And from there, they can make an impact. Like you have El Neni playing, the Carabao Cup games and Europa League games. So all of a sudden, if someone gets hurt in midfield, he's not coming in having not started. Same with Wilshere, Holding, Mertesacker, those kinds of players are getting games to stay fresh and stay fit and stay ready. So in that sense, the Europa League isn't the worst thing in the world. But going back to your point on Wilshere, he's one of those guys we all hold out hope for because he's all Arsenal. I know there was a thing with his Twitter bio where he took out the Arsenal bit, but I mean, he's Arsenal through and through, and I think we root for guys like that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, there's a little bit of a glitch there. I wasn't sure if you were still going.
Oh, no. No, the problem is I keep talking. If no one stops you, I'm just going to go forever.
No, you're good. You're good. But I think your little point there about the huge, because we're getting Reece Nelson games, we're getting Joe Willock games, we're getting Maitland-Niles games, and those, they're not going to play a huge role in our season as far as number of games played. But there will be a time in that busy winter, December, January, February, March of our season, there will be a time when those guys need to play meaningful minutes in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. It's for me, those guys are going to be important, and they're really the depth that we're going to need at that central midfield spot. So fingers crossed they can pull through. I want to touch on. I know we wanted to touch on one last thing as far as how far this season has gone. I mean, there's been a lot of hype about Manchester United season. Everybody already giving them the title, apparently. But just a couple thoughts on where they are as a team. Bill, what do you got about that?
So, quick little stat that was shared on Twitter by Yankee Gunner. Of the teams that they have played, 11th place Southampton, 14th Everton, 15th Swansea, 16th Stoke, 17th Leicester, 18th West Ham, and 20th Crystal Palace. So nobody in the top half of the table yet in the season after 6 games at that point. I think that kind of says it all. I think I had them finishing 3rd behind Arsenal. So honestly, I'm just going to stay with that because I have to have hope because it's the only way I'm going to stay committed to the cause. But I believe that, I want to see them play some teams from the top half of the table, and then we can kind of give a better opinion of Manchester United. But I think playing those teams, they've had a pretty easy ride, and a lot of late goals too when the teams are down and just getting, crushed already. So law of averages will come back around, in my opinion, on that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you there. Sorry, bud.
No, I was gonna say that's a great point, and I mean, I haven't looked at their schedule, but I'm curious to see the first time they play a good team is pulling it up right now. They play Liverpool October 14th, so that'll be an interesting game just to see where both of those teams are at. Really, Liverpool, for as much of a good start as they had beating us, obviously. They'll come into that game with a lot to prove. And then United, how Mourinho plays in big games. I mean, I will say Lukaku's looked a really good signing, scoring goals. Mkhitaryan looks really good. Matic has kind of been a dominant presence in midfield. And to Mourinho's credit, he's made Fellaini look like a semi-functional professional footballer, which is saying something. And then they do have a lot of talent out wide with Martial and Rashford and Mata and Lingard to some extent. So they're a good team, but it's just one of the things I really think the hype needs to be tempered until they actually play a team in the top half of the table. That's why I think those stats that Bill just explained are really important to kind of provide some context, whereas with Manchester City, they've played Tottenham, they've played Liverpool, they've played Chelsea, and they haven't lost any of those games. I think they've won them all, haven't they? They beat Tottenham, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm going to take your word for it, to be honest.
I'm going to take my own word for it because they – actually, I don't know. They might have. I thought they played Tottenham. If not, then – No, my bad. They have not played Tottenham. That was Liverpool they killed, so –
yeah, Chelsea, Liverpool. If you consider Everton anymore, but they only drew them 1-1.
Yeah, that was the one blip they had. But all in all, like talent wise, I think they're on another level with their squad. The only issue with them is defensive stability. But going back to United, I'm not sold yet because I want to see how they come up against a good team. But we're talking about that Manchester United Liverpool game. I actually kind of want to throw you guys a question. There's a certain manager in Merseyside that people seem to love, media seem to love, and really gets away with a lot because of his personality. But Jurgen Klopp has struggled a lot lately, not only with results but with some of his signings. Does he get a little bit of a pass from the media because of his personality? I mean, Ian, I'll throw that to you first.
Oh, 100%. And I think, there's he did something really, really smart when he came here is he let his personality out. And it's something that you generally don't see from managers in England. Most guys are pretty buttoned up and they're pretty stoic and really don't give the media much in their press conference. And whether he did it on purpose or not, I give him a lot of credit for it because he bought himself a ton of rope by just being entertaining as hell and being a different type of manager, being, a fresh type of attitude towards the game, really a German type of thing, because you see that a lot more with German managers in the Bundesliga and that. And it was something that the Premier League really didn't have. So, yeah, you're right on. He definitely buys himself a little bit of rope because of his personality. But I think he's starting to run out. His signings aren't coming through. They're not playing up to where they should be. And, people are figuring them out. It's time he's going to need to adapt and see if he can – change things up a little bit to start getting some better results.
That style of play isn't going to hold up. And I mean, that's a narrative that goes around, but it's one that I'm fully into because now playing in the Champions League, they're going to run out of gas even more. And as we talked about before, there's going to be a vital time in the Premier League. A lot of teams, I think in December are playing 8 games or something like that, like 7 Premier League games or 6 or 7 Premier League games at least. So there's going to be a time when you need those players to step up, and playing so many games in that short amount of time is going to be tough. And I think the allure of his personality is definitely starting to wear off. I've already seen Klopp out Twitter accounts being retweeted throughout the Twitter sphere, which I'm kind of laughing about. But his record isn't really that much better, or I think it might be a little worse than what Brendan Rodgers was at this point. And I know he had Suarez, but I think it's not going to last the way that they're going, and he definitely needs to invest in defense and some other things in order to kind of get over the line a little bit and start to produce some results. Because if not, and they stagger and start to lose some momentum, it's not going to be good, and Klopp out might actually be a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to send it over to you on that.
Yeah, it's just personality only gets you so far. Eventually, people are going to start to call you out. It is like you said, Ian, he got a long rope with this, but, Liverpool fans are not the most patient people. And I think, there's such obvious frailties to their game right now, and everyone knew they had defensive issues, and they put all their eggs in the Van Dijk basket. They didn't really seem to have a backup plan when that failed. And I mean, how their transfer team mismanaged that, I'll never know. I mean, they made ours look almost competent for a bit there. The Oxlade-Chamberlain bit is going to go down as such a waste of money, honestly. I look at it now, and I was iffy about selling him, but I look at it now and I think that was 40 million pounds that we stole, honestly. That I'm glad they didn't get to spend on a better player, because now we have players playing in our right positions and they're trying to fit this guy in somewhere, and he's barely getting off the bench in games against Newcastle. So, really who came off worse there. But kind of switching gears for a bit, just because, I know we kind of want to get into the U.S. soccer bit. Liverpool, obviously, with American ownership, same with Arsenal. And news broke today that Stan Kroenke, our beloved owner, said no one ever, tried to purchase most of Alisher Usmanov's shares in Arsenal, and would have made him a 97% owner in the club. Bill, we kind of had discussed this earlier, but I'd love to get your take on the ownership situation and Usmanov, Kroenke, or these consortiums that are mentioned.
This consortium I didn't even really know about until today. I read that article and a couple other things on there. I don't know if it's a red herring. I'm not really sure exactly what it is. But I know it'll probably, Kroenke would end up being 100% owner if he got Usmanov's shares. But my thoughts are, AFC are pretty much in the same situation they are now. If he were to buy them, I think it would probably get worse, but I think we kind of maybe are expecting that a little bit. But the positives that I have about it are that I think it could potentially be easier to buy out only one owner instead of having to buy out two or three. I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't think Kroenke would ever sell, but I think it's possible that maybe somebody can come in with a large enough bid that maybe make him happy enough that he would, and it would only be him. So that would be a positive there. I don't really think Usmanov is that genuine. I don't really think he likes the fans that much, in my opinion. I saw some things there. He just seems like he's kind of wants to be in the game and then wants to have control, but it's a weird situation. So if he wants to get out of the club and go to Everton, he can go there, because it's not going to get any better if he doesn't want to buy out the club. So we're going to have to deal with Kroenke one way or another. And maybe with full ownership, maybe he'll actually do something with it. I mean, I doubt it, but maybe it'll be easier for somebody to come in and buy it out. I'm not really sure what to expect, but at least you know what you're expecting right now.
I mean, the thing for me, I'm not going to pretend to know what type of owner Usmanov would be. I don't know anything about the man other than he's one of the wealthiest people in Russia. Mm-hmm. I really don't know anything else about him other than that. But he put out a statement today in response to all the reports about Kroenke trying to buy his bids, I'm just going to read a quick little line from it. He said, "I would like to be clear that I am not holding any talks with Mr. Kroenke about a sale. My interest in Arsenal from the beginning was long-term, and my intention has always been to buy additional shares should they become available." So he's not selling. He also said, where'd it go? He said, "I increased my shareholding from 15 to 30%, and also with my proposed offer for the stake of the majority shareholder, which valued the club at some $2 billion, that offer remains valid today." So to me, that means he's not going anywhere. Is that a good thing? I really don't know, because I think we're going to be locked in this power struggle between the two owners for quite a long time now. Is Kroenke good for the club? Absolutely not. We all know what he does with it. He uses it to leverage his business stakes in the U.S. He uses it to leverage better interest rate. For me, it's not a healthy situation for the club. It needs to go one way or another. But if Usmanov is the type of owner that's going to put money into the club instead of take money out, I don't care if he's a dick. Whatever, man. Let's get money into this club. Let's get somebody that wants to actually see this club succeed.
Yeah, I think with Usmanov and Kroenke, first of all, Kroenke getting 97%, I didn't quite know what the ramifications of that would be, but just in reading up a little bit today, basically he wouldn't have to publish accounts. He would be free to leverage against the club's finances. He could then list the club as, like on the market in the States. Basically, it would serve as a private company. And I think there is the inherent problem, where he'd basically have no checks and balances. Right now, yeah, he probably doesn't have a lot of checks and balances, but at least with the 30% shareholder, there's something that he can't do just whatever he wants. But, I think from Usmanov's perspective, at 30%, you can't do a whole lot to influence the club. So you're kind of stuck where you have all this money invested in the club, but yet you have no influence, no seat at the board or anything like that. So, I'm hoping he means what he says, that he's not going to sell. But I don't think Kroenke has any reason to sell. The club is a cash cow for him right now. He's bringing in millions of dollars every year, and with or without Champions League, he doesn't really seem to care. And in regards to the kind of person Usmanov is, I mean, let's be honest, most of these Russian oil guys are not exactly making their money on the up and up, but maybe you got to accept that that's part of the game now. Like, look what Abramovich has done at Chelsea, and then look at a lot of the other clubs. So I don't know. I mean, Bill, I'll throw this to you. When you look at the ownership, do you kind of have to put aside the ethics of the owner for the sake of the greater good, that is the success of the club, or do you kind of draw a line somewhere?
I mean, for me personally, like, obviously if he's doing, inhumane things, that's not something that I would support, but I have no evidence of him doing those things. So, on that sort of level, I can't judge either way. If he genuinely loves the club and wants to invest money in the club and wants to help the club succeed, I am all about that. If it comes at the expense of doing those things, no, I don't want that. But I have no evidence, like I said, of that happening. I think, with Ian reading that, those sentences from that article about Usmanov staying, it's still, like I said earlier, it doesn't change anything. It keeps everything the same. I wish they would give him a voice, but I think we all know why they don't want to give him a voice, because it would probably go against what they have that's comfy and cozy and what they're trying to get done. I think that it's hopefully not going to happen, so it kind of stays the same, but it just doesn't look like Kroenke's going away for a while, which is the really scary thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you even begin to get him out of that spot. I mean, he's trying to set this up where when he's finally done with it, he can pass it on to his son. He's doing the same with his teams in the U.S. He wants to do the same with Arsenal. He does the same with his property, his ranches, whatever. Like, that's what the guy wants to do. He's trying to build his wealth. And you know what? I personally can't hold that against him because, you know, he's a businessman. So that's what they do. I just wish he would get the hell out of our club, to be quite honest. I mean, that's fine. Go make your money and own your shit somewhere else. Just get out of our club. That's really where I come out on that. So, unless anybody has any other final words they want to throw in on the ownership situation, you guys both good on that?
I just second your notion. That's it.
I third it. Get him out.
All right. Guys, that sounds good to me. So more pressing issues just because it's coming up sooner. The U.S. men's national team. Now, before this weekend and next week's game selection and everything else, there's one thing I want to kind of throw out there to you guys to get your take on it. And I know you both have seen this, but for anybody who hasn't seen Bruce Arena's comments today to Sirius XM FC85, he was asked about what is the best position for Christian Pulisic. His response to that question: the challenge with Pulisic is always going to be to find his position. Can he play in a position on the field with some consistency to enable him to grow? That is the challenge he's had at his club, and that's the challenge he has with the national team. So, Alex, I'm going to throw this to you, man. This is our national team coach, the leader of soccer right now. What do you have to say about this man's comments here?
I think it just shows that he doesn't watch anything outside of the U.S. I mean, if you watch Borussia Dortmund's games, Pulisic plays pretty consistently at one position. You know, he plays on that wing position. He's not a guy who plays as a number 10 for Dortmund. He has that ability, but to say this thing about, oh, you know, we don't really know where he plays because he doesn't play consistently for his club. Well, that's wrong. He does, and it's usually on that left wing for Dortmund. But he has also played on the right. But basically, that versatility shouldn't be seen as an obstacle. It should be seen as an asset. That the fact that you can put other guys in positions they're better at because you have such a naturally gifted player who can play at all these different positions. I just think with Arena, he's not the type of manager who can handle a true, genuine, up-and-coming superstar. I don't think he knows how to utilize him. So he kind of throws out this thing of, oh, well, we're not really sure where he plays because he doesn't play consistently. I mean, you watch him play for Borussia Dortmund on that right wing or the left wing. It's part of what makes him such a special player, that ability to play all three spots behind the striker. So it's just one of those things where, in my opinion, Arena kind of shows his lack of perspective in connection with the global game. I mean, maybe it's just my bias against Bruce Arena that comes into play. So I'll throw it to Bill. Maybe I'm looking at it too harshly, but when you hear those comments, what's kind of your takeaway?
Yeah, you're not going to get a different viewpoint on this side of the microphone. He's arrogant, which would describe his inability of knowledge, his lack of knowledge about the comment. Just baffles me. Like, is he doing it on purpose because he's arrogant, or is he really, really that naive where he does not watch anything outside the MLS? And I mean, like, not to jump ahead to any point, but like picking Wando in the squad makes me think that he doesn't watch anything outside of the US. And even watching that still baffles me. But the comment about Pulisic, like, I don't like play the kid where he is been playing at his club and thriving, assisting, scoring goals, looking like they're having fun there. And, you could even move him around a little bit, but I don't know. The comment served no purpose. It made him look really, really incompetent, which I definitely already think he is, and do not think that he's the right guy for the job, and that's for sure. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to echo a little bit of the same as you guys. I mean, even for the U.S. national team, he's played the number 10 role a couple times, but other than that, he's played out wide. How is that not having a set position?
Yeah.
I mean, like Alex, you said he has a versatility to play across any one of those 3 forward spots, like behind the striker. And that's a great thing to have. Somebody that can move in and out and play all those different positions. I'm like, why is that being seen as a bad thing? You know? I mean, if, for example, you know how, take it back to Arsenal real quick, Maitland-Niles, he's an incredibly versatile player. And Arsene takes advantage of that, plays him at right wing back, plays him at central midfield. He played him some time at right center back. Like, the kid doesn't ever get to play in his natural position and grow and be able to develop that. And, you know, honestly, maybe that was the issue with Oxlade-Chamberlain. I don't know. But that's not the same thing that's going on with Pulisic. Pulisic is being played at Dortmund either on the left wing or the right wing every single time he plays. With the U.S., he's being played on the left wing or the right wing, occasionally at a number 10. I mean, that just is not anywhere near, like, that's not what he's talking. I mean, he's being right. So to me, like, I mean, does he, like you said, does he not watch anything? Is he that arrogant? I really don't, I can't even understand how he gets to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely think he might not watch anything that's happening outside of MLS. I'm not even going to limit it to outside of U.S. soccer because I don't think he watches like NASL, for example. But I'll use this as an example. Did anyone know who Bobby Wood was before Jurgen Klinsmann found him? You know, playing in the second division of Germany. I had no idea who he was. He didn't come up through a lot of the U.S. youth teams. But Jurgen put in the effort to find these players. And now I would say Wood is almost an automatic starter for the World Cup right now. Mm-hmm. And do you really think – yeah, if we make it. Do you really think Bruce Arena would have found Bobby Wood? No. I'll answer that for you. No, he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have found, you know, those types of players because in his opinion, the national team has to come from the domestic league. And you see it with the squad selection, the guys who are getting left at home. For all the talk about the German Americans, I mean, you've seen Tim Chandler didn't get called in. Fabian Johnson didn't get called in. Mm-hmm. Danny Williams, I mean, he's injured now, but even when he was healthy, he wasn't getting called in. It makes you think. But so the Pulisic thing, I think, is a symptom of a larger problem where I just think you've appointed this guy as a stopgap, and you basically hired him knowing his perspective is limited to what's going on in the U.S. and nothing else. And from a national team coach, I don't think that's acceptable. But obviously,
well, you know, I think you're right there.
Never going to question him.
Yeah, I mean, and you're spot on. One more thing I kind of want to throw out there. Another thing he said recently, right around the time this latest team was selected, that really goes to showing you where he is as a coach. He said, when I took the job last November, if you said to me you'd be in position in Game 9 to play a game at home that you had to win, would you take that? I would say yes. He's saying that, you know, if we're down to our last game at home that we have to win to qualify for the World Cup, that's acceptable? Like, you would take that? Are you kidding me? Like, Bill, shouldn't we be striving for something more than that?
We should absolutely be striving for something more. And I mean, I'm not, you know, I know Jurgen had his deficiencies, but I felt that with him, at least there was some hope that we were always striving for more, even though, you know, team selections and formations were questionable at times. I feel stagnant with this guy. And honestly, it is a step backward every time they play an international game that qualifies for the World Cup. I've been very nervous. Friday is going to be a very, very nerve-wracking time, regardless of opponent, because I have no faith in the coach. And if I have no faith in the coach, I mean, the players might, because they're all coming from MLS anymore. But, I mean, if the quality isn't there, and some of these guys are up there in age, Fabian Johnson being left out is absolutely mind-melting to me. His decisions are crazy. I mean, I think Orozco, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's like 31. I mean, and I'm not saying that that's old, but for purposes of what we need, there was a lot of other younger defenders I thought that could have came in, one or two more. I don't know. I have no faith in the guy. I can't wait till he's gone. And 18 is really in jeopardy. I'm shocked that I'm even saying that, but I really, really think it is.
And it's crazy you're saying that, because 4 out of the 6 teams have a chance to make it. I mean, 3 will qualify automatically, but even if you finish 4th in a 6-team group, you still have the chance to make it, and we've made it this difficult for ourselves. I mean, Ian, does that blow your mind?
It's astounding, man. I mean, are we going to make it? Yes. Are we in danger of not making it? I think it's being played up to be a little bit more than in reality. I mean, even if we lose at Panama on Friday, and we win our game next week, we're still going to go and play New Zealand or somebody like that, who we're going to beat and we're going to get in. Like, I know you don't really know that for sure. And even the fact that there's a chance that we have to go and play that play-in game or that playoff game, that's something that should be a problem. I mean, you look at some of the names that he called, and I know you guys started kind of touching on a couple of them, but the fact that we're playing Graham Zusi at right back.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Beasley is still a regular call-in for this team. Throw a couple of names out. Dax McCarty, Benny Feilhaber. I mean, guys, what are we – you're telling me that we don't have players playing outside of MLS that can do more for this team?
We absolutely do. I mean, I'm gonna read the roster because I want people to hear the names and realize how mediocre this team actually is. Because someone was telling me today, the talent pool is so deep, we've got so many options. Let me read the names to you, and then you decide for yourself. So we've got Brad Guzan, Tim Howard, Nick Raimondo. Already it's an AARP tribute. Then we've got DeMarcus Beasley, Matt Beasler, Jeff Cameron, Omar Gonzalez, Michael Orozco, Tim Ream, Jorge Villafana, DeAndre Yedlin, Graham Zusi. In midfield, you got Kellen Acosta, Juan Agudelo, Paul Arriola, Alejandro Bedoya, Michael Bradley, Benny Feilhaber, Dax McCarty, Darlington Nagbe, Christian Pulisic, Giassi Zardes, Josie Altidore, Clint Dempsey, Bobby Wood, and for the love of God, I still don't know why, Chris Wondolowski. I mean, I'll throw this to you first, Ian. When you hear the names that I just threw out, does any of that sound like, wow, this team could really do something in the World Cup?
If anybody could have seen the faces that Bill and I were making as you read those names.
Oh, I saw that.
That's all you would need to know. I mean, my God, I thought we were supposed to be moving forward. And you know what? I know this is kind of not exactly what you asked me, but your comment about the talent pool being deeper than ever, I don't necessarily think that's an untrue statement. I think there's a lot to that. I think our talent pool is probably about as deep as it ever has been. But our manager is not taking advantage of that. He's continuing to call in players that are in their late 20s. I mean, what are we still waiting for Darlington Nagbe to finally fulfill his potential? How old is he now? 27? He's not young anymore. He doesn't have potential. He is what he is. And we're still counting on these players that we think can Agudelo. I mean, we're counting on these guys who we think can step up. I mean, they're all past the point of being able to do that. Mm-hmm. For me, that's the thing. Like, we need to, and I get it. We're trying to qualify for the World Cup. We need to, and right now is not the time to experiment with new players. But there were friendlies recently that should have been experimenting with new, better players that are playing elsewhere that are not the same old garbage that got us to this point in the first place.
See, I disagree with your point about this isn't the time to experiment, because this whole point that Bruce Arena's made has been, oh, we got to call in experience. This isn't the time to bring in new players. We need experienced guys. Well, these experienced guys are the very reason you're in this position. These experienced guys are the reason you're in fourth place in one of the easiest qualifying groups in the entire world. And all this experience is really paying off for nothing. And let's be honest, a lot of the experience you're talking about aren't guys who've necessarily done anything meaningful. I mean, I don't know who or what a Dax McCarty is, but I don't want it on the national team. I mean, Juan Agudelo, I mean, he was relevant 10 years ago maybe, and now like he's coasted off of like, oh, eventually he might realize his potential. DeMarcus Beasley, I mean, come on, you couldn't find a better left back than DeMarcus Beasley. I mean, Mondolowski, I mean, don't get me started on him. I mean, I think everyone knows my feelings, but I'm just going to throw just so people aren't saying, oh, well, who would you call in their place? I'll throw out a few names that I call out in these people's places. For DeMarcus Beasley, why not call in Greg Garza from Atlanta United, having a fantastic season in MLS. So it's not even a Europe thing. Greg Garza is doing a great job at Atlanta United, having a terrific season. Why not call in someone like that? Instead of Michael Orozco, why not call in a Matt Miazga, who's getting regular game time in the Eredivisie in the Netherlands? Why are you calling in Graham Zusi as a right back? He's not a right back. He's never been a right back.
Where's Timmy Chandler?
Yeah,
started almost every game this year in the Bundesliga.
And he's been playing great. I've caught a couple of Timmy Chandler's games, but for some reason, because he had one bad performance at Honduras for the national team, like people have written him off. And
for fuck's sake, everybody on our roster has had a couple terrible games.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Bradley's had 4 years worth of them, and he's gotten by. And
Josie Altidore.
I mean, Josie Altidore's whole career has been that. And, even in midfield, I know he got hurt. Weston McKennie, a young player breaking through at Schalke, though, he would have merited a look. And so people say, why didn't we experiment earlier? I would have gone back to the Gold Cup where we used all these MLS veterans. Why not call in some of your young European-based talent then? I know a lot of them have club situations, but at least call in a few, get them in the program. Bill, I'm getting heated here, man, but just look at some of these names. I mean, help me out here. Explain
it's unexplainable. It's tough. There's hard to come up with words. But one of the things I noticed that happens a lot is when veterans get selected to play in squads like this, the heat sometimes gets taken off the coach for mistakes. Now, us soccer knowledgeable people, or I try to be, you guys are, but I mean, even the other ones that discuss this all the time, they give him a hard time because we really know what they probably should do to be successful because we see other teams that do it. I think he is so set in his ways and he picks these veterans, and I don't know if it happens accidentally. I don't know if he does it on purpose, but when they lose, we're looking at these guys and we're like, this guy's an idiot, but other people are like, why can't the team perform? They should play with heart, this and that, da-da-da. It comes down to the coach so much more, and people need to realize that. I mean, there is absolutely no way you can explain bringing Chris Wondolowski into this squad. Even players like Altidore and Bradley, I love them. I think they're great, but it just seems like instead of being on the front of the rocket, the team is flaming out. They're on the last little drag, the last little poof, and he's trying to squeeze every drop. And I just don't know how much more is left. I can't explain the squad. I literally cannot explain the squad. Why he wouldn't want to take the chance with some upcoming talent that has some experience in the MLS, which would be his bread and butter, and he'd look like a genius if it paid off, is beyond me. But Wondolowski, I can't even. I don't know. Somebody has to take this from me because I can't.
Well, to answer you kind of asked the question there, man. Why did he call in this team? Why won't he take a chance? He was hired specifically to call in this team. This is the exact team that U.S. Soccer wants him to call in.
That's true.
They wanted him to keep it status quo. They didn't want somebody to shake it up. They wanted somebody who could barely get by and qualify for the World Cup with MLS players and say, hey, look, we qualified with MLS players. MLS is great. That's 100% what U.S. Soccer wanted to see. That's why Klinsmann never got the support he needed when he was calling in players from overseas. Right. That's the issue. And I don't care what the MLS media says and what Alexei Lala says. If U.S. Soccer tells these people, hey, support this guy, they're going to support him, because if they don't, they're not going to have jobs.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, I mean, it is about access ultimately. Like, hey, we're prop up our MLS guys, or you're not going to have access to U.S. soccer. I mean, there's absolutely something to that. And you even see a difference in treatment from players who played abroad and come back, and how the U.S. soccer media treats them better. Like when Jermaine Jones played abroad, and then played for the U.S. national team, he got criticized every game. Oh, he's reckless. He's this, he's that. Once he came to MLS, and people are like, oh, well, now we realize how valuable Jermaine Jones is. Or Bedoya was playing regularly in France. Now he comes back to the U.S. and they're like, oh, he's so valuable. And, thank God Bruce is calling him in. That's a sign of great coaching there. I mean, it's remarkable how the narrative changes. And it's so easy to see through, because, I mean, Bruce Arena made this comment about you're not likely to see NASL players get called in on my national team, or something to that effect.
Shit, because he's not going to call him in.
Yeah, because he'll never give him a chance. So, it's funny because he won't look overseas to some of these guys that Klinsmann unearthed, like Bobby Wood, but then he also won't look in the lower divisions to find talent. And, Klinsmann, for all of his faults, found Jordan Morris. He found Miguel Ibarra, he found Bobby Wood, players like that. I think he was the one who found Fabian Johnson. I'd have to double check on that. But even within MLS, he's not calling in guys that are performing well. One of the guys I follow on Twitter, his name's Ben, and he mentioned that Lee Wynn has been having a great season in MLS. Matt Hedges, Walker Zimmerman, Steve Birnbaum was another one someone mentioned to me today. These are guys who are playing well in MLS and not getting call-ups. But then you have Benny Failhaber get called in for some reason. Beasley and Bedoya. I mean, it frustrates the hell out of me, because yes, we might even qualify, but it just papers over the cracks, in my opinion.
It really does. And those cracks go so deep that there's no way that we can even begin to touch on those in an hour-long podcast, let alone the last 10 minutes of a podcast, right? I mean, Jesus. It's as simple as looking at the way U.S. soccer is set up. Our players go play in high school, then they go to college, and then they go pro. Mm-hmm. Look at the ages of everybody on our roster. I don't have them specifically in front of me, but just kind of glancing at it. Pulisic just turned 19. Colin Acosta's 21? I believe he's right around 2021. Is there anybody else on this roster that is in that same under 21, under 23 age bracket?
I don't even have to look at it, no.
No, everybody else is late 20s, and they've never done anything on the international scene. Right? In world soccer, your players have to be making an impact and have to be getting that experience at a younger age, where it can help mold them into the type of player that can handle that pressure. Our players aren't seeing that until they're 25, 26, because they're coming out of college, they're taking a year, and then they're finally playing pro. It's a whole developmental issue. And until U.S. Soccer is ready to accept that and appoint a manager and support a manager that accepts that and sees that, we're going to see the same shit over and over again. I mean, for all of Klinsmann's faults, that is something that I think he recognized, right? And that's something that I think which is why he looked overseas. I don't think it was an anti-MLS thing or an anti-U.S. soccer thing. It was, these other countries do development correctly and we don't. And as a technical director and a manager and leader of U.S. soccer, I don't have the time to change U.S. soccer and have it be able to affect the national team while I'm still there. Does that make any sense to you guys?
No, I definitely think it does. And I'm going to throw a name at you just because you mentioned the 25, 26, 27-year-olds and how in the U.S. players are only really starting their pro career at that point. Mario Götze is 25 years old. the guy who scored the game-winning goal in the World Cup in 2014 and is now considered basically like not a lost cause, but like, oh, this is his last chance to really save his career. This is a young guy who was like considered like a prodigy in Germany, like considered to be the next superstar. And you know, after his game-winning goal, everyone thought his career would kind of take off. And now people are writing him off. He's 25. Darlington Nagbe only broke through on the scene around that age. I know he had to become a naturalized citizen and all that, but like even getting his name out there and shining in MLS, and now people are like, oh yeah, you know, Nagbe's a young guy and he's going to really prove himself. He's not young. It's. I think you were saying that earlier. He's not young at all, and the development system sets these guys back, which is why a guy like Pulisic, a story like that is only possible if he goes abroad early on. Him and his family had to take that big step of going to Germany and doing their, you know, making it on their own. And now you see that with Weston McKennie at Schalke. You see that with Haji Wright at Schalke. You see that with Josh Perez at Fiorentina. You know, there's a bunch of guys like that, you know, who are at least on the cusp of getting time. And I have so much admiration for young guys like that who take that chance because they know they're not gonna make it here. And Bill, I throw this question to you. If Christian Pulisic came up through the MLS system, would we even know who he was at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, I might, for the Pennsylvania reason, that might be about it. Other than that, I probably would have no idea because I would assume where he's from, he would have played locally, you know, before he was given the chance to go pro. I don't think so. It's difficult. It's difficult to say how well he would have done if he would have went in one system or another because of his skill level. But I think that the MLS only allows you to get to that to a certain degree because of the players that you're surrounding yourself with as well, or that are surrounded by you. I think that, you know, him going abroad was definitely the best thing for him. I think that he took his opportunity to shine and kind of went there. The setup is all wrong. Everybody I talked to that's even involved in soccer that played with me or played elsewhere or played throughout the state says that the setup is wrong. It's just it's not the right way to do it. It's not the best way to get the maximum talent. And like I said, I feel like we're living in, you know, decades ago and it hasn't, you know, advanced at all. And I'm looking for a little advancement, but I don't think we're going to see it until qualifying is over. And, you know, I wish I could be more optimistic about qualifying, but with this guy at coach, it's just like anything can happen at any given time.
I was just going to say, quickly interrupting, speaking of advancement, here's a tidbit of information that I'm sure will inspire everyone. Former U.S. men's national team coach Bob Bradley was at the U.S. Soccer Hotel. Bruce Arena invited him to help with the team this week because if U.S. Soccer was missing anything, it was definitely Bob Bradley's inspiration. Wow. The guy who failed at Swansea, who lasted 7 games. That's what U.S. Soccer needed. It's a home game against Panama, and a game we should win, and we need to bring in Bob Bradley for motivation. I mean, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say to that.
I mean, Jesus. It's such a mess, isn't it? And it's a sad thing. Man, Bill, you were spot on. Would we know who Christian Pulisic, would we know who he is at this point in time? No, because he'd be playing at Penn State?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, he's a Pennsylvania kid. He'd probably be playing at Penn State. Mm-hmm. He said it himself. I don't know if you guys happened to catch the 60-minute piece that he did. He said at the age of 16, he told his parents, I want to make it, and I can't do it here. Mm-hmm. He made the decision as a 16-year-old. A 16-year-old where, you know, shit, what were you at 16? When you're 16, you thought you were the best thing in the world, and nobody else was as good as you. I was the same way. We all were. I guarantee it. We didn't realize that we were a big fish in a really, really small pond. But at 16, he said, if I'm going to make it, I can't stay in the U.S. I want to go overseas. I want to go to Germany. It's crazy. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the story, but he said he went to school his first couple days in Germany, and they started talking German to him, and he's like, dude, I don't know German. Called his mom, told his mom about it, and his mom's like, you want to come home? He's like, no. It's like, I want to stay here because I want to make it as a professional soccer player. A 16-year-old and our 50-something, 60-something-year-old coach can't see it? I mean, I don't know.
It's a problem.
I think that right there is just the perfect example of where this country's at as a soccer program. And I don't know. Are we going to qualify for the World Cup? Yes. Does part of me hope we don't? And that's a really, really difficult thing for me to say. Part of me hopes that we miss. Because you know what? If we miss, every single person in U.S. soccer should be out of a job. And we can rebuild the program in the way it needs to be rebuilt. Now, I don't know. I'm not saying I want that to happen. I'm really not, because I don't want that to happen, because I can't imagine a World Cup without us there. But I'm tired. I'm tired of mediocrity. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think we all are tired of it. I definitely don't want us to not make it, but I understand the reasoning behind it. I was gonna say something about what I just saw about it, and it totally left my mind. I'm gonna shoot it over to Alex because it could just come back to me. I totally forgot.
Yeah, no worries. I mean,
it's my rambling right there. That'll get you.
It is one of those things where, like, you know, people might listen to this and think they might listen next week and say like, oh, well, we ended up winning those games, so everything's fine. No, everything's not fine. Like, let's look at who we're beating. It's Panama and it's Trinidad and Tobago. Like that's who's stopping us from getting to the World Cup. Like, those are games you should win. Like, beating those teams is not a huge accomplishment. And people are going to say, oh, well, Klinsmann lost his first 2 games. Yes, and you know what? Like, one of those was away to Costa Rica. That's a game we've always struggled with. The other was a home game to Mexico. So you basically played 2 of your 3 hardest games. And yes, you lost, but there's still been plenty of time to make up for that. So the excuses are just kind of mind-numbing to me. So, you know, it's one of those things where, Ian, you mentioned, would it be good if we missed it? I don't have enough faith that the media would actually put on enough pressure on U.S. soccer to do anything. And I'm wondering, you know, is the sport in a good enough space where if we miss the World Cup, it wouldn't hurt, you know, with casual fans? But I mean, I have to think about that one, because that's a really loaded question. I don't know. What do you think, Bill?
About the tanking and not doing well. I mean, it's a very tough question. I know I answered it. I said I probably wouldn't want it regardless. But on a kind of funnier note with this a little bit, did you see like Eric Winalda was saying that he was going to run for U.S. soccer president? Did you see that? He was like, oh, I'm going to make the change. It was on Twitter. He was saying it. I was dying at that. But honestly, would it be any worse? I don't know.
It couldn't be any worse. I think that's perfect, because like, Winalda blows a lot of hot air. Let's be honest. Like, he likes to hear the sound of his own voice and think that he has all the answers. I mean, I don't like the sound of my own voice, I got to be honest. But, like, it's just someone to shake things up, because right now there's a lot of people in U.S. soccer who are too comfortable where they are. Sunil Gulati, no one is actually sure what it is he does, but he's been there for a long time. You know, the cozy relationship between U.S. Soccer Federation and MLS has always irked some people. And, you know, certainly I'm not going to get in the pro-rel debate. I think that's an entirely different podcast episode. But just there's something that needs to happen to shake things up. Whether missing the World Cup is good for the long-term benefit of the country, I'm not sure, though. But the fact that we even have to ask that question means that there might be some validity to it. I mean, Ian, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. Like I said, I don't want us to miss the World Cup. That kind of defeats the purpose of everything for me. There's no way I want us to miss it. My point really is just something needs to happen where there needs to be a major shakeup with U.S. soccer. Because what we're doing isn't working. Everything is status quo. And honestly, bringing this full circle reminds me a lot of Arsenal at this point in time. everything is status quo. Everything is comfortable in their job, in their position, and it's never really going anywhere other than where it is right now. So for me, I just want to see something change on both fronts. So that's really my final words on the subject. I'm going to send it over to you, Bill. What do you got to close us up?
It's funny that you make the connection because, like, I seem to do that a lot with my sports teams. I seem to have picked ones that all seem to have a similar problem. But Arsenal and the U.S. men's national team definitely just seem to be in that realm. I'm hoping for a change at U.S. soccer. I honestly think that a change in the status quo is probably going to happen to U.S. soccer before it happens to Arsenal. Because as mentioned before with the Kroenke lineage, and his son is really over at those Arsenal games all the time. I'm not really 100% positive, what is going to happen there, but I have hope that things will get better. I look forward to watching the game Friday. I hope the boys that do get put out there do come out and play and actually, win, because that is what is important in getting in. And hopefully after 2018, maybe by the time the World Cup comes back around here in 2026, we can actually have something to look forward to going to.
Well, let's get some score predictions, though, from you, Bill, for Panama and then Trinidad next week.
Panama, oh, man, I'm going to say 2-0. Trinidad, I'm going to say 4-0 on that one as well. I think we're going to do a clean sweep. Now, maybe say 4-1. I'll give Trinidad a goal. Just for fun.
God, that's a lot of goals, man. That's a lot of goals. What's the stat? I think Christian Pulisic has either scored or assisted 9 of our last 12 national team goals.
Yeah, I think they're due.
9 of 11, 9 of 12, something like that.
I think they're due for it.
Not against Panama.
Well, I'll give it 2.
I'm nervous. I'm nervous, man. I don't trust. I don't trust it Friday. I think we get out of there with a 2-2 draw and we win 4-0 against Trinidad.
Yeah, I'm conflicted. I think it's going to be a win and a draw. I'm just struggling to figure out which one happens. So I'm going to say we beat Panama 2-1, and I think we'll feel pretty comfortable going into Trinidad, and I think we slip up there, so maybe like a 1-1 draw. But okay. I think all of us probably see us going through. But I think I hope people understand that we're looking at the larger issues in the U.S. soccer realm, not short term. But let's hope for the best. Let's hope we make this World Cup, and who knows, maybe some new faces emerge if Bruce Arena lets them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, it's going to be really interesting to see next week's podcast, because I'll guarantee you it's going to be 100% U.S. soccer. We'll know by next week what we're looking at as far as the World Cup qualification process, whether we're in or we've got to go to a playoff game. We're going to know, and we're certainly going to be here to go over it and try and figure out what's going on with it, because God knows that U.S. soccer can't figure it out on their own.
They're preaching to the choir, my friend.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's not a pessimistic view. I don't know what is.
Well, it's the truth. It's tough.
We've been conditioned, right? I mean, let's be real. You're a Philadelphia sports fan. I'm a Buffalo sports fan.
It's over. It's not.
We've been conditioned all our lives, so.
That's why I said before, most of the teams have a same just sort of ilk about them, and I'm like, what did I do to myself? I have no idea.
It's amazing how that happens, isn't it?
It's great. It's like a law of attraction, I
just want one of my teams to be good.
Yeah. Same.
All right. On that note, guys, where can we find you? Bill, where are you at on Twitter, bud?
I am at AFC Gooner O.
Alex?
You can find me at UF Gooner AJ, and obviously you can find the podcast at Eurosnob Pod or Facebook.com/EurosnobPod.
Oh, you're not going to tell everybody where to find me. What's my Twitter handle?
I was going to say, I didn't want to steal the thunder.
You run mine out there, and I'm like, sweet, I don't have to remember it. I believe it's Gunners at GunnersFan6.
Yeah,
that is correct.
Sounds right.
That is correct.
Usually Alex runs that out for me, so I don't have to remember it. But yeah, check us out, guys. We're gonna be back, like I said last week. We're gonna make this a more regular thing. I think Bill's gonna be a more regular contributor to this podcast as well. We love having him on. So as long as he's willing to come back with us,
always,
we're gonna have him back as much as he wants to be here.
Nice.
So for Alex, for Bill, for Ian, man, thanks for stopping in. Thanks for listening. Just remember, like it, share it, subscribe it, whatever. Get the word out because, it'd be nice to be talking to several thousand people right now. What would we say, about 40 people? Either way, it's cool. Even if there's nobody listening, it's all good. We get to get some stuff off our chest. So
yes.
On that note, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.